Arizona State's a sharp play. Arizona State at 13 or better is the number that the groups were looking for. As far as the public goes, you got good two-way action. So the risk for the books is on the Arizona State side. It's mostly from the sharp bettors. They also, though, went under team total. Arizona State under team total in the first half. They went under 10 at minus 120. And I can also share a prop for that game as well. Arizona State, Cam Scattlebo, Skattebo, under 105.5 rushing yards, under 105.5 and 105 rushing yards, up to minus 120. I like Arizona State as well. I think Texas is one of those teams that just hasn't been able to win by margin throughout this season. In fact, coming down the stretch, that's exactly what we've seen for them. Now, can they turn it up in this bowl game, in the playoff game? Sure. On paper, are they double digit better than Arizona State? Sure. But again, they haven't been able to prove that on the field. For me, I've passed. I haven't bet it for Prez, but if I have to bet it, I do like the Arizona State side. Oregon, Ohio State, great matchup. Here's where we have a little bit of conflict. Everybody agrees on the over. I know that Raz put it out earlier at 52. I believe his group got down 52 or 53. Since then, another group betted at 54, 54.5. That's why we're looking at 56s this morning. The public continues to bet it over regardless of how that number moves from 52, 53, all the way to 55 or 56. Personally, I have not been able to bet that because I just think once the number moves that significantly, I don't see the value. Instead, maybe peak at the first half because the first half also did get bet over. But the one team total that did get bet under is Oregon. First half, Oregon under 14 team total. I like the Ohio State side. I have a future on Ohio State side. My subscribers have a 5% on Ohio State. I think at plus 500. The question I have to answer is, am I going to hedge? Do I buy Oregon up to plus 3 and try to hit maybe even a middle or hedge the bet? That's where I stand on that game. But I like Ohio State. I've been talking about them the entire year. I think they're the best team in college football. Power rating wise, they're right there with Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame, that's where we've seen the biggest change because sharp bettors did get down on Georgia, Prez, early. That's why Georgia was a favorite over the higher ranked Notre Dame team. But as I touched on, the bettors haven't spoken yet. Remember, it was the sharp bettors that got out ahead. It wasn't the people that are betting today. Those that are betting today, they're betting Notre Dame. No surprise. So that's going to help balance the risk for the books. So you have sharp bettors on Georgia early and the public now helping balance that out. I'm sure there's some sharps that like Notre Dame as well. Guys I respect have them as the highest power rated team in college football. So I can see that. But it's also the public that's helped balance that one out. 672 Wofford minus 1.5 too. I believe that went off. 674 Western Carolina plus 10.5 and plus 10. 676 Pittsburgh minus 14. 692 under 156 Chattanooga Mercer. And in NHL, New Jersey Devils up to minus 120. That's what I got in NHL, in college basketball, in college football. And again, I wish everyone the best 2025 ever.
Notre Dame or Georgia. We opened Notre Dame minus 1, quickly flipped to Georgia minus 1.5. Total was 44. It's gone up to 45.5. So you've seen over money coming on there. It's really not sharp over money. It's just really the public and kind of the market moving that way. So it's not like we've seen a really respected guy come in and take over 44 or over 44.5. That number's just kind of climbed up. After all the early Georgia money, you started to see the Notre Dame sharp money come back. Plus 105 on the money line, plus 1.5. We were sitting at pick all yesterday and this morning, and now we have flipped back to Notre Dame on our opener. Notre Dame minus 1. We believe they should be the favorite in this game, and that is the game that I like. I like Notre Dame. Obviously, it's basically a pick'em game. I just like them on the money line.
Yeah, I don't talk hardly at all about college football props, but this one jumped off the page just on DraftKings. Will Howard over 252 passing. So in that Michigan game, Prez, you'll remember, Ohio State got away from their big explosive passing game. They tried to run, and he ended up throwing for 175 yards. I'm kicking myself because I thought they're not going to make that mistake against Tennessee. What happened? 311 yards passing. So they know what their strength is. It's getting out and getting the balls in the hands to those explosive wide receivers. And earlier this year against Oregon, Prez, he had a season high in his completions, he had a season high in attempts, and a season high in his yards, 326. I look, the weather is going to be perfect out there. I think Ohio State knows what they need to do. They're going to have to make this a track meet against Oregon. This game probably is going to be a track meet. I think this number is entirely too low. I'll take over on his passing. Let's start with Colin Sexton over 3.5 assists. We were playing Colin Sexton over his 3 points earlier in the year, but he's moved now to assist. He's gone over 6 games in a row. And what's big is he's averaging 11 potential assists in those 6 games in the last 6. When you're getting 11 potential assists and the number is at 3.5, this is an absolute must play. He averaged 5.7 potential assists in the previous 14 games. He's becoming much more of a facilitator than a scorer for Utah, and the Knicks give up 26 assists per game. D'Angelo Russell, it says under 1.5. The number is actually 2.5 made threes. 100% my fault. I typed the wrong thing in there. But Prez, this is his first game with this new team. He's not even starting. He's shooting 33% from threes this year. He's coming off the bench to spell Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is the facilitator. He's been going over his assists. So I think D'Angelo Russell's coming off the bench to pass the ball. I can't imagine him coming in and just firing up a bunch of three-pointers. So I'm going to take his under 3. He's not shooting the ball well. He's not even getting the start. And I know D'Angelo Russell could be kind of a selfish guy, but I don't know if he comes in off the bench and starts firing away a bunch of threes. This number is way too high. So I'll take the under on Russell. Yes, Sabalenka is absolutely fantastic to bet on, especially when she's going up against players that are of much lesser caliber. She does not screw around, and you see this in tennis all the time. Like, you have this big favorite, they mess around, lose the first set, get broken in the second, and you're sweating this out. No, not Sabalenka. Prez, in her last 32 wins, 26 of them have been 2-0. Like, she drops the hammer when she wins. And she did it in her last, her first match of the year. And actually, maybe in the last match of 2024. She won 6-4 barely in the first set, and then she wins 6-0 in the next. So she's cruising. She's playing Putintseva, who she beat in October. Sabalenka to win 2-0, especially in the first couple rounds of these tournaments, is just fantastic value. So this match starts at like 5 a.m. Because they're playing down in Australia. So if you're looking for it, it's technically probably going to be tomorrow at 5 a.m. American time.
I'm going to look at the team total here. Look, this is a Notre Dame team that scored 27 points or more in each of their last 11 games. Whenever there's been a total of 49 or less in Notre Dame games this year, they've scored 28 points or more in their last 6. And with that total of 49 or less, and they averaged 45.8 points scored per game. Now, usually college football, when you see a total in the 40s, like it is today with Georgia and Notre Dame, it means both teams are pretty good defensively or both teams are pretty bad offensively. I think the sports books are looking at both teams are pretty good defensively, but in those types of situations, Notre Dame has had no problem putting up a lot of points in those when it comes to that totals parameter. Georgia, by the way, this isn't the same Georgia defense that we've been used to over the last few years. You take away the 2 games in which they dominated Texas for whatever reason, this Georgia team has given up 20 points or more in 6 of their last 8 games against everybody else not named Texas. And actually, over the last 6 games, they're averaging allowing 24.5 points per game. Here's a big concerning factor for me when it comes to Georgia today. In 2 of their last 3 games, they've been crushed by the opponents on the ground. One of them being Prez's favorite team, the UMass Minutemen, who put up 226 yards rushing against Georgia, and then Georgia Tech followed that up the following week by running for 260 yards or more. Notre Dame, by the way, 193 yards or more rushing in each of their last 6, 10 of their last 13. The Irish will be able to move the ball on the ground in this game, and that's going to open up some play action passing opportunities. Prez, and I am going to take the Notre Dame Fighting Irish over their team total of 21.5. Houston right now is a 5-point favorite. Look, the Rockets have lost 2 games in a row now, both at home. They haven't lost 3 in a row all season long. They're coming off a 104-100 home loss to Miami. The Rockets, and they shot 39% in that game, which is significant. Why? Because the Rockets this year, following a game in which they shot 40% or worse, have gone 5-0 straight up in ATS. And have won those games by an average of 14.4 points per game. So off a poor shooting performance, the Houston Rockets have been very good this year. Houston's also 6-1 straight up in ATS in division games this year, including a win at Dallas earlier this season. And in those 7 division games in which they went 6-1 straight up in ATS, they outscored the opposition by an average of 13.1 points per game. Houston actually is 7-2 straight up and 6-3 against the spread following a loss this year. So not only have they only lost 2 in a row 2 times this year, they haven't lost 3 in a row at all, and they're very good just coming off a loss. So you look at Dallas. Luka is out. Kyrie Irving is questionable. Klay Thompson is questionable with an illness. At 66.8 points per game. Now, the latter 2 may play, but I just can't believe they'll take any kind of unnecessary risk with more than half a season to go, meaning the Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to go with a relatively healthy Houston Rockets team and lay the 5 over Dallas, Press. We've all had those teams that have been an enigma to us that we can't seem to be on the right side of, whether it be a side or a total. And my suggestion, anybody out there, what Prez just described, it's frustrating, is just stay away from that team for a while. That's the best policy. This is an Atlanta team, 4-0 straight up in ATS in their last 4. 3 of those contests, they were an underdog. They won those 4 games by 15 points per game, so they're playing very well. And that's indicative of their offensive production in those 4 contests. Averaging 128.5 points per game and shooting 51% from the field, while the Denver Nuggets, Prez's favorite team, their last 3 games, they're allowing 130 points per contest, and opponents have shot a combined 52% against them in those 3 contests. Denver is just 3-7 against the spread in non-conference games this year. Their defense in those games has been horrific against Eastern Conference teams for whatever reason, whether it be a lack of familiarity or just not being emotionally ready to play. They're giving up 128 points and allowing those opponents to shoot 49%. In those contests, Atlanta 4-2 straight up and 5-1 against the spread as a road dog of 6 or less this year. So they've done very good in this role. The one caveat that I have to bring up, folks, because you got to love the NBA. Their best player, meaning Atlanta, Trae Young, is listed as questionable with an Achilles injury. But we've seen very little line movement right now. It's hovered around 5 or 5.5. That would lead me to believe he's going to play. But this is one of those situations. I don't see this line going down, if anything, going up, because possibly Young will be out of the lineup. But I still think without him, Atlanta would be fully capable of covering a number, especially a higher one, if he's not going to play. So I would wait on this one, folks, to maybe a couple hours before game time before making your bet, because you may get a better line.